everybody, this is On, and I am here with this month's video as we are closing out 2020, and I'm sure there's a lot of you that are ready for 2020 to be closed out. And I wanted to video inside today just because even though the weather isn't too bad right now, I'm actually waiting on some warmer clothing to come in so that I can maybe even get out during winter this time to film. But I had more notes than normal. Basically, that's it. I had more notes than normal, so I wanted to be where I could look at those a little bit easier as I was talking with you this month. So this month, I'm going to address something that's come up for a lot of people, that a lot of people have expressed to me that they're feeling really challenged by, and that is how to live soulfully in our material world. And this seems to be more and more of a challenge, and I think what's happening is because we've had so many different things happening in our world, so many challenges over this last year, that even a lot of the spiritual people, a lot of the light workers have expressed that, hey, I'm feeling really challenged in certain ways. I'm feeling like, I feel drained out. I feel frustrated. I think a lot of them thought it would be easier. I think, for a lot of people, even if they knew better underneath somewhere, they felt like, well, I can just do one meditation and everything will be better. And, I wish it was that easy, and in some ways it is that simple and that easy, but in other ways it is not that easy. And I think with all of the divide that we've been seeing going on, it has taxed people that much more. And I think with a lot of the light workers, one of the things that we really have to check in with your healer, a light worker, an empath, or, just on the spiritual path in general, it's important to kind of check in and go, am I trying to convert people to my thoughts, my point of view, or am I allowing them and accepting them to have their own thoughts and points of view and things? And this is challenging because people have felt like, well, if I resonate as a certain vibration, everybody's going to love me. If I, have certain thought patterns and good intentions, everybody's going to love me. And, if I know the truth, then everybody needs to know that truth, and they need to see it the way I see it. And that's really not the case in these days and times. We need to realize the value of differences. We need to realize and accept that some people just aren't ready to hear it, or we may not be the channel, or we may not be the vehicle. So this month what I want to really do is address some of the key aspects that people have expressed they're feeling in particular. And those key aspects have to do with feeling this huge drain on their energy, particularly in those that are doing the spiritual work, the healing work, trying to hold the light, as they say, dealing with a lot of frustration, and particularly the frustration of not being able to get through to others. And here again, that's where I say we got to kind of do that check-in point. Yes, we want them to be aware. Yes, we care about them, and we want them to move forward under God's presence or divine light, but we also have to respect where they're at and where they're seeing things, and be very, very careful and conscientious of that, and to focus on holding our own light in many ways, as opposed to, in essence, trying to convert. Because for many people, that's what they're really trying to do. They have good intentions behind it, but they're really trying to convert. And when we try to convert people, then we are naturally going to push them away. We're naturally going to have them pull back from us, maybe become resistance, especially if it's connected to some trigger that they have or something that they haven't dealt with. There could be a lot more attached that they may not even know about, that causes them to pull away. So I want to address that frustration piece. And then the third key piece that I hear a lot of people saying is that it's really hard to watch the devastation. It's really hard to watch the division, the separation, the riots, the deliberate attacks on people, to see all of the hardships going on and to not necessarily be able to have other people see that. It's really hard to go through the process, because that devastation piece is really about going through the process. Again, people think, well, if I just sit down and meditate a little bit, then I don't have to experience the devastation. Well, some of us, this is exactly what we built for, and I've said it before, but our soul realizes that this is the stuff we came here for. This is the real work, this moving through things. And we're here, not just to have necessarily a joyride and vacation, although maybe some people get that in their life, but we are here to see this process through and to not repeat mistakes as a collective or as various groupings have come together to help each other not repeat the past, and not just allow ourselves to be bowled over by everything. So I feel like these are really key components. So what I want to do is I want to break them down, because within this we have some great tools, and I want to talk about each of these 3 key components and then the other components that go into it. So let's start with these 3 key components and look at what they're about. So the first one is drain. When we look at what drain is about chaos. It's about upheaval. It's about unexpected turmoil. And I think that has definitely applied in 2020. I don't think very many people could see this kind of turmoil going on. Even when I run the codes on things, I can see things like restrictions. I can see things like freedoms being taken away. But it doesn't tell me whether that's going to happen due to a pandemic or whether that's going to happen due to whatever else in the world. That's something we kind of have to see play out. But when we look at this component, and people are expressing this aspect of feeling drained, another piece of it, drained with the ED on the end, then takes us into an aspect of where we are dealing with things that are trying to pull us out of the soul self. It's trying to disconnect us from our intuition. It's trying to wrap us up into a lot of logical thinking, a lot of issues that aren't pleasant to deal with. They're not fun to deal with, and so we tend to want to escape them. So we have to be very careful, because the drain energy shows us that we're getting too caught up in the drama. We're getting too wrapped up in what's happening. We are too much, in some ways, too much involved in things. We've gotten sucked in a little too far, and we need to maybe step back in things. It's showing that we're dealing with a lot of things that are very trying on our spirit. And we're going to have to stand in that soul self. We need to make sure we're taking care of things promptly, that we're not putting things off, that we're not running away, that we're not trying to escape things. And that's kind of just some of the key checkpoints to really think about when you get that aspect of drain, feeling drained out. And this is, again, particularly happening with our spiritual community. With the healers, with the light workers, with the starseeds. They've expressed this. And I think, again, a lot of them are trying to do the saving thing. That's kind of how they're wired. They're feeling the pain that even people may not know that they're feeling. If they're an empath, they may be feeling the pain inside. They may be feeling the fear that somebody else is avoiding or escaping or not even aware of whatsoever. So I think those are kind of key things to keep in mind, that the drain is a natural thing that can happen when chaos stirs up. And so those checkpoints become important. Drain is naturally going to happen where there's upheaval. And we've been in upheaval all year. It's not like we had 1 week upheaved in our life, or a weekend upheaved, or a day upheaved. We've had basically an entire year of upheaval. And that sustained upheaval is going to naturally create this kind of drained energy. So when we look at frustration, in dealing with frustration. Frustration in codes is our rebel energy. So where we feel frustrated, that is where our rebel energy is surfacing. That's where our fight energy is. We're in more of that fight instead of flight. You know, in some ways, the drain energy can almost want us to flight, and the frustration energy can make us want to fight more. And it's not about fighting for the sake of fighting. It's about feeling drawn into battle because there's something important that needs to be heard or stated or said or recognized that hasn't been getting recognized, that isn't aware. So the frustration is coming from being able to see things that maybe other people are not able to see, and or at least not able to see from your perspective, or not wanting to see from your perspective. They would rather be in battle. And so this also hits our spiritual community very hard, because when we look at that aspect, again, we might be warriors, but we're not necessarily fighters. And we don't like to be in battle. We don't like to be in argument. We don't like to have to stand up with force. But there are times that has to be done. There are times that is necessary. And so the key is for us to remember to stand up for the truth, to stand up for the cause without going into the heavy battle energy. So I think that's a very key piece to look at, and to remember that when we are frustrated with others for not being able to see things, we're in battle with them. So you want to step back out of that battle and kind of just stand in the truth, live in the truth. But you can't force it on somebody. You just can't push them to believe or to see what you're seeing. You can pray for the truth to come out, praying from the open standpoint that, hey, if I'm not seeing the truth, show me the truth. If they're not seeing the truth, help them see the truth. And if I'm not the catalyst, then bring in the catalyst for them that can see it. And keeping that open framework around it is going to be really important. Now, the third piece that has been expressed to me a lot over the last couple of months has been, it's really hard to see this devastation. It's really painful to have to go through this process and to know what's happening, and people start to feel helpless when they see this devastation, because they feel like, I can see it happening, and yet others are not seeing that happening. It's like we're having to go through this devastation just so people can understand what's really going on, so that they will wake up and stop ignoring it, so that they will no longer just push it off into the background of things. So this devastation energy is, I think, really, really a powerful piece in many ways to work with. Devastation, where we're feeling that aspect or struggling with the devastation we're seeing around devastation, are power struggles. And the part that's so frustrating is that people, when they're not standing up and taking command of their own life, and I think that's what's so hard for a lot of the spiritual community, for a lot of people in the world today, when they're trying to live spiritually in this material-based world, is they're seeing people just kind of roll over and let things happen to them. And, you know, it doesn't matter whether this is world affairs or personal affairs. It hurts either way when somebody sees what is going on, when they see that process happening, and they see the devastation, because they realize, when you're really seeing all the components, you realize how unnecessary the devastation is. They realize the value and the importance in it, but they also realize that it's not necessary to be happening in our world. So this is a really tough piece, because it's like, gosh, it hurts me to see people going through things. It hurts me to see people going through these painful experiences. But as we well know, it's sometimes those very painful experiences that are what is needed to shake somebody up. And they wouldn't need those painful experiences if they had been able to see things sooner. So yes, it's hard to watch these pieces. It's hard to watch things unfold. It's hard to watch people go through pain. But that pain is a great awakener. That pain is what gets people to eventually open up and stand up for something where they've been super complacent in things. And it gets them to face their fears. And for some people, it takes more than it takes other people. And there's no way around that. But as we start to realize the value of devastation and the beauty that is involved in devastation, and to realize that sometimes the devastation has to occur in order to get the forward momentum. Sometimes it has to come to these extremes in order for people to take hold and take command of their life and to stop letting others dictate. And I think that's happened a lot in our world, where we've gotten to a point where we've just said, I don't want to deal with this. This is overwhelming, blah, blah, blah. We've just turned our power over and turned our power over. Well, unfortunately, in that process, it's gotten turned over to people who are dictating in life instead of helping us learn how to have command over our own life. And I don't mean this in just world affairs, because this happens a lot in family dynamics, where you have somebody that is dictating over other people in the family unit. We even have this in the spiritual community, where you get people, they want to dictate to other people right and wrong, and this is how you do it, and you have to follow my path, my way. And they don't teach them how to do it themselves or take command of their life for themselves. So these are the three key components that we're dealing with, that people have expressed frustration with. So now let's talk about the tools that we have to handle these three areas and how the code interactions come around for them. So the first step that we could take would be conscious. Now, when we are conscious of something, what we're doing is we're literally breaking down the lies, the manipulation, and the deception. We're stepping out of the games. We're stepping out of the illusion. Some might even say you're stepping off the matrix in aspects. You're choosing to live in truth instead of lies when you become conscious. Focus on yourself. Now, the self is really, again, I've talked about this in many videos. It's not about being selfish. It is about self-care. And it is about honoring what you need to do for you. And this is where our success comes from. It is through focusing on the self that we can step out of a lot of the tough pieces, and we can find the success as a result of our own efforts. That's what focusing on the self is about. It's about getting out of those spirals in many ways, and not expecting things to be handed to us, but creating our own successes. Gentleness. When we implement gentleness into things, what we are doing is we are really stepping into the soul self. What we're doing is we're choosing to be in divine partnership, be in partnership with the divine self, the soul self, God, and that then opens the door to creating gentleness in a situation. So gentleness is a really powerful tool, because what we're doing is we're realizing that we may have to stand on our own. We may not be in the norm of thinking. We may have to break the norms. We may have to break the boundaries a bit. We need to live in what works for us and honor that. And really what holds us and invites in divine presence. So gentleness is really in some ways dividing in divine presence to the situation, which we know is always going to help it. Then we have simplicity, and simplicity again is about coming into the truth. It's getting down to what's real. When we get into simplicity and we implement that piece, what we're doing is we're getting rid of programs. We're getting rid of the lies that we've been told or that we've told ourselves. And so we are choosing to come into truth. We are choosing to stand with truth. And when we have all of this excess aspects and pieces and components, it confuses us, it distorts us, it can pull us out of the truth. So when we simplify and when we implement simplicity and we get down to the basics of things, then we get down to the truth of things. Unconditional love. And unconditional love is really about kind of harnessing in some of that rebel energy, that fighter energy that is reactive, and it is learning from the reactions that we're having so that we can choose wisely and then create blessings out of the situation. And unconditional love, when we bring that in, what we're choosing to do is we're choosing to create good fortune out of a situation that could take us for a hard fall. And so that unconditional love's a really valuable piece. It's like turning your luck from bad luck to good luck in things. And so it's a powerful piece in there. Then we have also forgive others without tolerating lies and deception. And I feel that add-on is really important because we oftentimes think that forgiveness is just this really submissive process that is just about letting other people have their way in a lot of aspects, or just in some ways it's gotten distorted into condoning people's behavior, but it really isn't. When we forgive, what we are doing is we are choosing to step into our own power. We are creating a freedom for ourselves through forgiveness. We are standing strong in who we are, realizing that, you know what, I don't need people who are going to lie and deceive and manipulate me in my life. I don't need situations that are going to feed and nourish that type of energy in my life. And I am much happier and stronger on my own without that. And I'm willing to walk my own path and to be in command of my life instead of turning that over to other people just to have people in my life. And forgiveness is really a way of saying no to what removes you from spirit, what keeps you from being strong. It's about saying no to the pieces that don't work for our soul self, that don't that pull us into the distortions, that pull us into a completely human existence. And as we know, this is about a balance. It's about a relationship. We're not fully human. We're not 100% soul self when we are living in a body. It's an integrated relationship between the two that is happening. Yes, we are definitely more than this body, but when we are in this existence, in this plane, we are in this body, and we need to work with that. And so this aspect of being able to forgive and to stand in this forgiveness is so critical to not allowing others to walk on us. And again, we can forgive other people, but that doesn't mean that you just necessarily, say, okay, I forgive you, now it's okay to go back to mistreating me. That's not really working in for forgiveness, and that forgiveness is really about freeing yourself. It's freeing yourself of these pieces that are weighing you down and making life heavy. And so it's really an interesting thing because it's really a path of coming into personal power, coming into standing up for yourself, and just not letting people do whatever they want to you in that process. When we move on to the next step, it's about choosing freedom and flexibility in your life. Now, freedom is really something that we achieve when we're willing to meet our responsibilities, when we stop listening to everybody else in the world and we start listening to ourselves and we start trusting our inner self. That's where freedom really originates from. Flexibility is an aspect of learning from our past and really looking at the different options and what different things present us and being open to something that we maybe hadn't thought of before. And when the two of them come together, it opens up our creativity. So it's about getting creative with what we have in many ways. It's getting creative with the wisdom we have and the resources that we have, and getting creative to create an open and inviting the divine energy in what must be done to things. Support unity and harmony. Now, unity is really about inviting in or coming together to overcome those challenges that are very major challenges and tribulations that want to create falls for us. And it is about working with other people in unconditional and divine love. And that means I recognize you have your differences, and that's okay, and I embrace that, and I think we can become stronger if we bring those differences together, and that we are going to see each other through the hardships instead of turning against each other, instead of bringing each other down into these hard crashes. And harmony, just like flexibility, is about saying we're going to learn from each experience we go through, and we're going to continue to choose the path that is going to create a favorable future for humanity, for us as a human species, and not just favorable for some people or not favorable for other people. And that's an important piece right now, because if we don't learn from our past right now, we are in for even harder lessons. And I don't want to see that happen to people in the world. When unity and harmony come together, we now enter into what is a space that is really opening us to some unlimited possibilities. It allows each of us to harness our wisdom and our learning and to learn from each other, but to imprint our own style. You know, it's just like when you work with a mentor, it's not about following or specifically repeating that mentor's every step. It's about taking the lessons and the experiences that they went through and putting them into your own life and bringing them out in a way that allows your style to show through, as opposed to just be their style of things. Then what we want to do, the next step is indulge, or the next tool is to indulge creativity. I'll get there, indulge creativity. When we indulge creativity, what we're doing is we're choosing not to compete with each other. We're choosing to say, this doesn't have to be an either or situation in our life. This doesn't have to be an either me or you dynamic in our life. It is about saying we each have amazing things to offer. And again, if we can blend our skills, we don't have to compete. If we can just embrace the beauty that each of us has to offer, instead of saying, I need to be better than you. This is where true equality is. It's not about having the same things or the same gifts or the same talents. It is about opening the door and saying, you're great the way you are, I'm great the way I am, and neither is better or worse than the other. And that's where true equality comes in. It's about realizing no person is higher than, less than, better than, worse than anybody else. We all have our challenges, we all have our blessings. And the key is about standing in those things we are gifted with and those things that are our true assets. And just doing something because it fills our heart and giving our best to it at any given time, and not worrying about how that compares to somebody else, because in essence we never truly can compare to somebody else. It's just our style, our way. And I always bring up that old example that walking may not seem like much to one person, but to the person without legs it sure seems like a whole lot. And taking even a couple of steps is amazing. But if that person said, well, I'm such a failure because I can only take 2 steps instead of walk 2 miles, well, that's not true at all. That 2 steps may be a huge success. That may be a huge thing for them. And their skills may lie in something else. And that's really what we want to do. We've got to break down that. And timeless. Know what is timeless. Timeless runs on the same pattern. When we become timeless, we're also removing that competition. We're removing the hierarchies. We're removing these structures that lock us into feeling devalued. And that's what a lot of the structures do, is they make us feel unworthy. And every one of us is worthy. Every one of us is divine essence, is no less than God presence. And all we have to do is accept and embrace that. So the timeless piece and knowing what is timeless, these are the core values. These are the real things. They may not always be tangible to your physical senses, but they are the real pieces that are incredible and amazing and the real gifts. These are the things to focus on, because these are the things of the soul. What is timeless is not restricted to this dimension, to this existence, to this earth or planet, or even this universe. They are true no matter where they exist or what they exist in. Honor your own journey. And our journey is our prosperity. And when we are working with the prosperity, that's really saying that when we honor our journey, we are going to create results no matter what. And this brings us into our soul self, because we do the work, we've done the work, we do what is necessary in the process. And then when we're done, we can share what we've created. We can share the results of what we produced. And when we do this, when we are living from that abundant self, that's where the abundant self is. You do the work, you put the effort in, you create a result, and then you share your excesses with other people. You come together and everybody is giving a piece of what they've created. And when this happens, there is no deprivation. There is no shortage. There is no starvation that is going on. Because there really is enough. There really is plenty to take care of everybody. And we have to get to that realization. And it's very important. And this is where, we don't always want to just be offering handouts. Yes, we want to help people when they're truly in need and they're truly in trouble. But we don't want them to get used to just handouts, because we want them to embrace their own journey. There is a beautiful connection to the soul self in working for something, in creating a result, in creating something there. And so when we look at this, we want everybody to be in that abundant space. And it's kind of like if you go to a potluck and somebody isn't able to bring a dish or food to the potluck. Well, maybe they can contribute something else. Maybe they can do all of this, help with the setup and the breakdown of things, and organizing things up, and finding room for everything, and coordinating an activity or whatever it is. There's always something that can be contributed. And we don't want to deprive people of that. We don't want to deprive them of the opportunity to share something. And again, there are times that they just may not be able to, and that's okay. But when we're from our abundant self, we don't have to worry about that. We can see where the differences are. We can see when it's truly needed and when it's not. So it's a very much about including or giving opportunities for everybody to be included, in a sense. You're not going to be deprived by giving. Observe. Simple word, observe. And again, observe is another one of those pieces that brings us into freedom. It brings us into who we really are, and it allows us to consciously and by choice remove the excesses. It is through observation that we actually can really gain strong experiences. It is when we observe things that we really begin to experience them, and we're choosing experience in the process instead of just letting the process sweep us up and flow us around in it. So this is a key thing, and one other side note is just walk away from people and situations that are focused on greed and materialism. It's just like sometimes you've got to shut the computer down, you've got to shut the news off, you've got to disconnect a little bit. And it's very important to know that, when you hit these spaces of drain and frustration and devastation, that you've got to step away from these things. Because if you're around a lot of people who are in greed and materialism, you are going to feel a disconnect from your soul energy. It's going to pull you away from your soul energy, and you have to be willing to say, nope, that's what I need to step away from and reconnect with my soul energy. So now that we've got all these components down, these individual pieces down, I want to look at which ones to use for which ones, for which areas that you're feeling. And I think that this is going to be helpful because all of these tools are great at dealing with life, and they're all great advice at any time, pretty much. Particular ones code up better for the particular aspects that we're feeling. So let's look at drain. Again, when we're in drain, remember, we are wrapped up in the drama. We're wrapped up in the chaos. We're wrapped up in the turbulence and the upheaval, and we need to remember that a big goal of that is to listen to our intuition, to realize that our head might not be completely clear because of the drama and the chaos, and that we're going to have to tune into what's those universal principles, what's the divine principles, and to come into a calm space where we're seeking to find something that will help reestablish some calm in our life, because the calm will remove the drain automatically. It gives us power in the situation to see it through. So the first tool to go under drain is focus on the self. And when focusing on the self, or the self combines with being drained, when you implement that tool, when you are drained, what you're doing is taking command of your life. You're taking command of the situation at hand. And this is really, really important, because usually once we're wrapped up in the drama and the chaos, we're out of command. We've turned our power over. We've let it be. So focus on yourself. When you're drained, focus on yourself is a great tool to use. It's gonna bring you back into being able to influence things. It's going to put you in a position where you can help other people, where you can guide them, you can direct them, you can help them get out of the turmoil. You can help see them through. You can be the grounding force, as they say, for it. Go into gentleness. Okay, when gentleness combines, is implemented in when we are drained, what we find is this allows us to go deep within ourselves. It's the gentleness that brings out the infinite self, the infinite soul self. And when the infinite soul self comes into a chaotic situation, it's like it shines a huge invitation and a huge opening for miracles. It's really kind of a miracle worker because you're coming into vertical alignment, and that means you are bringing God into the situation. So implementing gentleness brings God in, and that we know is always going to take care of the chaos and the drama and things, and ease up our drain. Implement unconditional love for drain. When we do this, what we do is we open the door to being able to work with others as a team. We open the door to, again, being able to take command of the situation, being able to help people get past the trauma and the shock of the situation, and to move forward. Freedom. When freedom comes into the situation, what it's doing is it is helping people to find their own personal strength and to get out of the stress, get out of the victim patterns that might be present in the situation. And for your own self too, it's helping you. So, how do we implement freedom? Well, we need to do something that allows us to maybe not be on a time schedule, maybe be something that doesn't have restrictions placed on it, and just allows us to be ourselves. That's a way that we implement freedom. When we're focusing on the self, it's about taking care of personal needs, for example. It's about taking care of what we need to do for ourselves in things, honoring what our body is needing, nutritional needs, rest, whatever that is. Gentleness is just about finding our calm space. It's really about softening our energy up, letting go of any of the aggressions, the anger, and things like that we have. The simplicity tool is really about, okay, pare away all the excess stuff. Get down to the core roots of it in there. So these are all incredible tools. Unity. When unity comes into play, when we implement that, when we're feeling drained, that is going to allow ourselves to expand beyond the situation. It's going to let us to walk away from any sense of loss and to just tune into what's really core and what's really important, and to realize that we don't maybe need as much as we think we need. We may not need to give as much as we think we need to be giving. We may not need to produce as much as we think we need to produce. It kind of just releases the pressure on things. It removes what is excess, and it calls us to get right down into that piece of realizing our choices are incredibly important, and those choices are going to impact not only the situation but have major cascading effects to them. So when we implement unity and we work together, or we're willing to work with other people, and that unity is not even just unity with other people, but unity of ourself. Self-unity, I think, is a key one in this particular situation when we're talking about feeling drained or drained out in life. And that just, it releases so much pressure. It's just like, okay, let's come into the soul self, let's clear out the excess, and now we can get down to what's real. We can get down to the basics. We can, ease up maybe some of our responsibilities and things. Creativity. And creativity enters in, and remember, creativity is about getting rid of the lies. When that enters in and we bring that into where we're feeling drained or we feel a sense of drain, again, we are taking back our power. Part of why we feel drained is because we're giving our power away. So this allows us to regain our power and stop giving our power away to everybody and everything else. If we really want to help other people, we can't be giving our power away to them. We need to hold and maintain our own power, and from there we are in a position to help them. But if we are not maintaining our own power, we're not going to be in a position to help other people, and it's going to be very exhausting if we try to push ourselves forward in doing lots of things to help other people or just living through life. It's going to be very, very tough. Timeless. Again, timeless is the same thing. Look to these timeless pieces. Look at where are the lies, where can I get rid of the lies, and how is this chaos and this upheaval allowing me to dump the lies and to stand in this truth, pull my power back in. And the timeless things, there isn't a right or a wrong or a good or a bad in them. They exist in their wholeness, and that's in essence what you are doing when you step back into your power. You're coming into your wholeness. So now let's look at frustration. What are the key out of all these tools that we have that work for frustration? Well, focusing on the self, just like before. And because frustration is this rebel energy, what it does is it settles the rebel energy down because we're making our own accomplishments in things. Again, coming back to what do you need to accomplish? What do you need to achieve for yourself? And when you implement this into where you are frustrated, because oftentimes what happens is the frustration is coming up because we are doing things for other people. And I don't mean just doing things like a generous act for them, but we're doing them based on their rules, their guidelines, their restrictions. We're doing it for them and not ourselves. We're doing it for something material and not for the soul, not for the enjoyment of it. So when we focus on the self and we bring that into what we're frustrated, and we start doing that within the situation that we're frustrated with, we automatically bring in and open up unconditional love. We automatically bring in the ability to succeed over the challenges of the situation, and we automatically bring ourselves peace in the situation. And of course, once we do that, the frustration dissolves. Unconditional love. That also was in the drained energy. Now, when we combine that or we bring that in with a situation where we're frustrated, what we're doing is, again, we're coming into the infinite self. And when we step into the infinite self, we really can't be frustrated with something when we're standing in the infinite self, because we're seeing it through the soul's eyes. We're seeing it through God's eyes. And what we're doing is we are saying, okay, I need to get out of the reaction, because the reaction is going to take me for a hard fall. And so when I get out of the way I get out of that reaction is to implement unconditional love. And again, unconditional love isn't always about saying right. It's not always about bending to everybody else's will. It's about standing in the soul self and the truth. And once you do that, then you'll open up the infinite connection. You'll open up the vertical connection, which is where God pours down into the human self or the human existence, is through the vertical connection. So now that you do that, you realize that you don't have to be so outward. You see it for the inner process that it is, and you realize that this is something that needs to be resolved within you. And once you make the resolution within yourself, then you will be able to resolve the outer frustration as well. Creativity. Again, creativity, what it's doing is it is exposing the truth. It's facing the truth. It is stepping out of the competition of where you're being triggered or where you're being reacted. Some people want to pitch you into this competition, but when you're frustrated, part of why you're frustrated is because you're trying to live by earthly standards. You're trying to live by what you've been programmed is success. You're trying to live by something that is material world standards and not divine qualities. And there's a very big difference, because when you're living by material world standards, you are locking yourself into the heavy, dense energy, and that is going to be frustrating. That is going to stimulate triggers, and that is going to put you into reactive spaces. And once you're in that reactive spaces, then you start getting to a point where you don't feel good enough. You don't feel good enough, ironically, for this world, but that's not true, because your soul self is more than good enough for this dimension. So this is true of both creativity and timelessness, being timeless and going into the timeless aspects. And again, you are opening peace. You're opening up peace in this vibration, in this energy. You are giving yourself the ability to overcome the extreme challenges that are present and to release yourself from what is frustrating. So when you get creative and you indulge your creative energy, that could be anything. It could be cooking, it could be drawing, it could be writing, it could be anything. Anything that allows you to just be in self-expression is going to be creativity. And again, coming back to what is timeless. Most of the time when we are frustrated because of the restrictions that are involved. We are frustrated because of confinements. And it's coming out of things that are not timeless. It's coming out of things that are based in this world only, that are based in a situation only. And if you take them out of this world, if you put them into the spiritual realm, those things have no value or importance. It's kind of like saying, your soul self has no value or use really of a car unless it's in a 3D world and it's using that to get along or to interact with people. But just as the soul self, a car is not timeless. A chair is not timeless. These material things are not timeless. These accolades are not timeless. Okay? What is timeless is oftentimes, again, the intangible qualities. Kindness, compassion, values. These are the things that are timeless. These are the things that work no matter what the situation is. And then we finally have devastation. And we have just actually 3 key things that work really well with devastation. And that is gentleness, forgiveness, and observe. And so when we are feeling devastated, and what's really interesting about all 3 of these pieces is they're not high action pieces. Like some of the other things like creativity and focusing on yourself and the freedom, and those things are actually a little more active, a lot of them. But when we get into gentleness, forgiveness, and observe, these are things that are really more about stillness in many ways. They're really about sitting with something. So when you are struggling with seeing the devastation that's happening in the outer world, when you're dropping into those spaces of just like, man, everything's just falling apart and I'm just feeling devastated, or the situation seems so devastating, and oftentimes we associate that with being hopeless, right, as well. And again, remember that that sense of hopelessness only comes because we've turned our power over. We've turned our power over to the situation or to a person. So gentleness, when that gets implemented into where we are struggling with devastation, you're literally implementing God's presence into where you've turned your power over. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're bringing things to completion. So gentleness allows things to come into completion. If we go into aggressive spaces, that's going to bring a whole different result, and it's not necessarily going to be favorable, and it's going to lock the devastation in for a longer period of time. So is it, really any wonder that oftentimes where there is devastation, they keep trying to open up aggressiveness there. But in devastation, if we implement gentleness in this, we allow the completion to happen. We allow everything to culminate and then settle down. We've brought it to its pinnacle. So that bringing, again, the gentleness is about just sitting back and letting go of that tension. It's coming into connection with the divine energy and to the God presence. And that just naturally allows the gentleness to move through us. That allows it to move into the situation so that it can get resolved. So gentleness is really about going to help the devastation get resolved. When we implement and use the aspect of being able to forgive or working in forgiveness in this situation, we are taking back our power in the situation. And sometimes that is about stepping out of the situation. It's about saying, you know what? I forgive everybody involved in this situation, because in their true self, they are all operating from divine presence. They're all operating from this other space. And it is through being able to forgive yourself, not because of inadequacies, but because of being in a human existence and using forgiveness that we're all in a human existence in this space and time. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to make poor choices. And once we implement the forgiveness, we can then turn things around. So it's through forgiveness that we can turn the devastation around. Observe. Again, observe is such a powerful piece because it frees us from the restraints that we are standing in when we are feeling the harshness of the devastation or the harshness of a situation or having to watch people go through hardships. And when we do this, the observation allows us to come into our divine self. It comes right back into that vertical self, and it opens the door for us to release attachments. It opens the door for us to be able to see it on a more in-depth level instead of just the material world level. It opens us to see things through the soul's eyes. And that makes it such a powerful tool when we're dealing with devastation. So let me just summarize that again. When we're dealing with it, these core aspects, when you feel drained or drained, you want to focus on the self, bring in gentleness, implement simplicity or simplify things, work from unconditional love, implement freedom, be in unity, engage in creative activities, implement creativity, and focus on what is timeless. When you're in frustration, focus on the self, implement unconditional love, implement creativity, focus on what is timeless. When you're in devastation, go into gentleness, go into forgiveness, and observe. And those are the key components. So you can see why I didn't try to film outside today, because way too many notes, way too many incredibly important pieces. And I feel this is so big though right now, because I feel like this has been such a challenge for a lot of people. So let's take a moment and let's just breathe. Let me take my glasses off here. Let's just center into a couple of really good breaths. And just take a moment to center in and think about, where have you been feeling these components? The frustration, the aspects of devastation, the drain. And consider for a moment how much you've been turning your power over to these situations. And as you're seeing that, let yourself feel God, the divine presence, the pure energy of unconditional love, of timelessness, creativity, of gentleness come through you. And as you feel that move down through your body and fill you, see it move outward from your heart center and move into those situations where you feel the drain, where you feel frustrated, where it's hard to look at the devastation. Just inviting divine presence into each one of those. Take a moment to be conscious of how that has allowed your own self to shift. How that shifts your energy, and letting that flow move through you. And knowing that that divine presence will handle all of it. And you can once again now focus on yourself. Focus on what you need to do for you. And feel your energy come back up as a result of bringing your focus back to you, back to your own divinity. And then as you're ready, you can go ahead and open up And let your eyes open. Let yourself come back into connection with your human self, your body, your form. And I just want to remind people that it's so easy to feel powerless in these situations, but we are not powerless, not by any means. And it just takes a few simple tools like this to help us step out of some of those spirals and come into that divine energy, to come into sacredness, to come into connection. Disconnect to get connected. And these types of lessons, these types of understandings, these code insights, they're so powerful in helping us through our days. And I know I create these videos, but I also want to remind everybody that the code journey for 2021 is out. So, feel free to get your copy. Go on to the website, compassioncodes.com. You'll find the links that get you directly to the pages that you want for the version that you want in there. But when you're working with this type of consciousness every day, when you're working with this flow, this understanding, it makes it so much easier to stand in the soul self in our material world and to deal with the things that are happening in this world and in your own life. And this is incredible because we are in times that are trying us, that are challenging us, and we have everything within us that we need. We have everything within us that will solve, resolve, bring balance to anything that is going on in our life. We just have to stop and tune into it. So with that, thank you everybody for staying with me. I know this has been a little longer video, and I appreciate you hanging in there for these insights this month, and I will connect in with all of you next month. Take care.